The man across the room doesn't know you're watching him. He thinks he's careful. He arrived 12 minutes early, chose the corner table, positioned himself with his back to the wall. He's scanning faces every 45 seconds. You've counted. With the practiced rhythm of someone who is trained to do exactly that. That's his problem. You spotted him in the time it took to set your coffee down. The way he holds the cups, thumb inside the handle, index finger braced against the rim, the jacket that's too worn for the shoes, the watch that's too expensive for the jacket. Someone built him a cover story and forgot to make the details agree with each other. He's watching someone 3 tables to your left. You already clocked that target 10 seconds after walking in. Amateur hour. You don't look at him again. You don't need to. You fold your newspaper to the next page and let the morning move around you like water around a stone. 30 years ago, you were that kid. Same posture, too straight, same eyes, moving when they should be still. Same absolute certainty that you were invisible when you were anything but. It took 3 years, 4 countries, and more failures than you have names for before you understood the first rule of this work. The most dangerous person in any room is never the biggest, never the loudest, never the one whose eyes keep moving. It's the one you never noticed was sitting there. This is the story of how you became that person, what it took, what it cost. And the question that follows you into every quiet room, every ordinary morning, every cup of coffee in every city whose name you won't say out loud. What does it actually cost to disappear? Here's the question nobody thinks to ask. When SEAL Team 6 kicks down a door at 3 a.m., who told them which door? Not a satellite. Satellites see buildings. They don't see which room, which floor, which 30-second gap between guard rotations, where a 4-man team can move without being heard. Not a drone. Drones follow. They don't infiltrate. They don't spend 8 weeks sitting in a cafe learning the difference between a man who's nervous because he's late for a meeting and a man who's nervous because he's carrying something he shouldn't. That intelligence comes from a human being. A human being who has been living inside a life that doesn't belong to them, in a city that has no idea they exist, speaking a language they learned so thoroughly they dream in it. Without that person, the helicopters circle, the operators wait, the mission doesn't happen. The unit that trains and runs those people has never officially existed. No insignia, no entry in any military directory, no press release, no recruitment poster, no congressional hearing where anyone says its name out loud. Congress knows about it only as a budget line buried inside someone else's appropriation. A number without a label, approved without comprehension year after year. The military acknowledges its existence the way you acknowledge a sound you heard at 3 a.m. and decided not to investigate. Quietly. And never again. Here's the number that matters. 200 people total. Every analyst, every field operator, every support asset, the entire organization. You could seat all of them in a mid-sized hotel ballroom with room to spare. Compare that to the 70,000 personnel across the rest of special operations, and you start to understand what this unit actually is. Not a force, a scalpel, 2 functions. Human intelligence, people who go places, become people, extract what needs extracting through patience and conversation and the long, slow work of being trusted, and signals intelligence, the technical architecture behind it all, the capability to follow a single encrypted signal across a continent in real time. The hammer needs someone to find the nail. You are going to become that someone, and if you'd never heard of this unit before this moment, that means they're doing their job exactly right. You've been through hard before. You know what it feels like when your body has nothing left, and your mind reaches down and finds something underneath the nothing, and forces you to continue. Delta broke you down over months, and rebuilt you into something precise. BUD/S tried to drown you for 6 months straight, and you came out the other side, changed in ways you still can't fully describe. You think you know what hard is. You don't. The selection for this unit doesn't test your capacity for suffering. Every candidate here has already proven that. These are Delta operators, SEAL snipers, Green Beret team leaders. The suffering test was years ago. Everyone in this room passed it. What this selection tests is something no physical program can measure. The ability to dismantle yourself, not your weaknesses, your strengths, the specific things that made you elite. Those are exactly what they're trying to remove. Day 1, they don't run you, they watch you walk. Specifically, they study how operators move through space, shoulders set, spine loaded, a forward lean that broadcasts, I am prepared to accelerate if necessary. necessary. An experienced surveillance photographer can tag a special operations background from 100 feet in under 3 seconds based on nothing but gait. You walk into any room and something in the room changes. You've always taken that as a compliment. Here it's a disqualifier. You have to learn to move like a man who has nowhere important to be and nothing worth protecting. Day 4. Reflex suppression. Someone crowds you from behind in a narrow corridor without warning. Your hand moves toward your hip before your brain has finished processing the input. That's not a flaw in your training. That's your training working exactly as designed. The problem is that the training was designed for a different kind of work. Here that reflex marks you, labels you, turns you from background into foreground in the mind of anyone watching. And in this work, becoming foreground is how you die. Week 3 brings the test that eliminates more candidates than any physical evolution. You're given a task, real stakes, meaningful consequences if it fails. You execute it successfully, cleanly, no errors. Then you return to the room and you sit down and you say nothing. The candidates who wash out, and 90% of them wash out, not because they're weak, but because they're human. They fail here, not with words, with something smaller, a shift in posture, a certain quality of stillness that is actually the opposite of stillness. That is the body trying very hard not to show what it wants to show. The micro expression that says, I did the thing, someone noticed that I did the thing. The unit doesn't keep those people. It keeps the ones who complete the task and return to the room and have somehow made peace, real peace, not performed peace, with the idea that the accomplishment and the acknowledgement of the accomplishment are two entirely separate things, and only one of them is available in this work. The other one you give up at the door, permanently, no graduation ceremony. One day a handler appears, shakes your hand without introducing themselves, leaves an envelope on the table, and walks away. Inside, an address, a plane ticket, a name that isn't yours. Welcome to the activity. The name has changed 6 times that anyone can confirm. Gray Fox, Central Spike, Task Force Orange, the Army of Northern Virginia, the Intelligence Support Activity, and others that have never surfaced in any document, declassified or otherwise. Names that existed for 18 months and were retired before a single journalist thought to ask about them. That's not bureaucratic habit. That's operational architecture. An organization that cannot be named, cannot be targeted, cannot be budgeted against by people who want it defunded, cannot be killed by anyone who understands what it does and would prefer it stop doing it. By the time someone figures out one name, the unit has already moved to the next. That's the point. Even acknowledging that it exists is classified at a level that most people with security clearances will never reach. Your orientation isn't a briefing room with slides. It's a single conversation, 40 minutes, with a person who tells you almost nothing specific and somehow conveys everything that matters. Here's the structure. The shooters, every tier 1 unit in the American military, are extraordinarily capable of one thing: executing a precisely defined mission against a known target at a known location during a known window of vulnerability. Give them those 3 variables and they will not fail. Your entire function is producing those 3 variables, which sounds administrative until you understand that the people this unit hunts have survived as long as they have, specifically because they have made themselves unknowable. No pattern, no fixed location, no digital signature, no routine that holds for more than a week. The analogy your handler uses, almost as an aside, almost too casual. Human sets the trap, SIGINT reads the trap, the shooters spring it, remove any one element. The whole architecture fails. One more thing as he stands to leave. The apartment, the car, the cover employment, the secretary in a Munich office who answers phones for a consulting firm that exists only on paper. She was hired through cutouts so layered that she couldn't identify you if she tried. You are already living inside the fiction. Don't break it. The target's name isn't Hassan. That's what you call him, which means that's what he is. Before you ever see him in person, you spend 2 weeks studying not who he is, but how he thinks. Because Hassan has operated in this environment for 11 years without being caught, which means Hassan is not careless. Hassan has a system. And the critical insight, the one that reframes everything, is this: careful people don't survive long term. People with good systems survive long term, and every system, no matter how sophisticated, is built from habits. And habits are patterns. And patterns, if you have enough patience, are visible. His system looks like this. He never travels the same route to the same location twice in 1 week. He rotates 3 phones on a 10-day cycle. He meets no one one-on-one. Always a third party present. Always a public space. Always a seat with an exit behind it. His driver changes on a schedule that appears random, but cycles on a 19-day interval. That interval took your team 4 weeks to identify. You arrive as Klaus Richter, German national, import-export, industrial machinery components. Boring enough that no one asks follow-up questions. The cover has existed on paper for 14 months. Tax filings, a registered business address in Munich, a digital footprint going back 4 years, a secretary who answers the phone and genuinely believes she works for a consulting firm. She's right, just not the kind she's imagining. You spend the first 6 weeks doing nothing interesting. You eat at the same 3 restaurants on rotation. You attend business networking events and exchange cards for contracts that will never be signed. You go to the gym at consistent times. You establish yourself as furniture, present often enough to be familiar, boring enough to be invisible. Then you start mapping, not Hassan directly, the people so far inside his routine that he has stopped registering them as variables. His regular Thursday cafe has a waiter who knows Hassan's order without being asked, has known it for 2 years. That waiter is the most invisible person in Hassan's week, which means he's the most valuable person in yours. You don't approach him near Hassan. You find the cafe where his cousin works 3 weeks before you need anything, and you become a regular there instead. You tip well, you remember names, you ask about families. Over time, you become the kind of customer people mention in passing. It takes 19 days before the cousin comes up in conversation naturally. Week 6, something shifts in the perimeter. 3 different vehicles, same model, different plates, appearing on streets that share no logical route. Never the same car twice, each appearing no more than twice. Someone has constructed a counter-surveillance net around Hassan's movements. He's more careful than the brief suggested. You don't press forward, you create distance. You change your own patterns, you file the report. 48 hours later, Sigyn has cracked 2 of his 3 phones. What emerges is larger than expected. Hassan isn't just moving money. He's the connective tissue between 4 separate financing networks across 3 continents. The politicians who want him kept alive are correct. He isn't a spider. He is the web. Remove him and the web survives. Map him completely and you can take it all down at once. A courier is coming. Physical documents, names, account numbers, a complete architecture of the financing operation. Hassan trusts paper precisely because paper can't be intercepted remotely. Your focus shifts. You're not watching Hassan anymore. You're waiting for a nervous man with a leather briefcase who has no idea his night is about to be rewritten. The courier arrives on a Tuesday. Short man, late 40s, carrying a leather briefcase with the specific tension of someone transporting something irreplaceable. He takes 3 separate taxis from the airport, switching at locations that don't share obvious logic, doubling back twice on foot through a market district. Textbook counter-surveillance, the kind someone taught him once without explaining the reasoning behind it. You've seen better from hotel concierges. Room 412. You file the report at 11:14 p.m. That night, a team you will never meet enters the room while he sleeps. The documents are photographed. Every page, every margin notation, every handwritten number, and return to the briefcase in identical order. The whole operation takes 22 minutes. The courier wakes the next morning with a headache he attributes to recycled cabin air on a long flight. He delivers the documents to Hassan that afternoon. He never knows they were already read. 1 week later, $40 million in terrorist financing frozen across 6 countries. 12 arrests on 3 continents. 3 attacks dismantled before the first component was moved into position. A shopping mall in Paris. A subway station in London. A hotel lobby in Bangkok. Your name appears on none of the documentation. Klaus Richter leaves the country on a Wednesday for a business meeting in Frankfurt and simply doesn't return. The apartment is cleaned by a team you'll never meet. The lease terminates quietly. The gym membership expires. The shape of a life dissolves without leaving a waterline. But here's what doesn't appear in any report. The courier's name was Tariq. You learned that afterward through a channel that wasn't part of your brief and probably shouldn't have reached you. He had a wife, 2 daughters, a younger brother whose debts to the wrong people had become Tariq's problem. which is how Tariq ended up carrying documents for Hassan in the first place. He was arrested 4 days after the delivery, convicted on evidence that included the contents of documents he had technically only transported. He died in a detention facility 7 months later. Cardiac event, the official record stated. His youngest daughter was 5 years old. You don't put this in your report. There's no field for it. The operational outcome was correct. The intelligence was real. The attacks didn't happen. All of that is true. You carry it anyway. To the next city, the next name, the next identity. You carry it the way you carry the languages. Not on the surface, but underneath, where it changes the weight of ordinary things. The next mission is already waiting. This time, the number isn't $40 million. This time, the number is the population of a city. The engineer has been responsible for 200 confirmed American deaths. Everyone in the intelligence community understands the confirmed number is a floor, not a ceiling. No verified photograph younger than 10 years. The single image that exists, a young man, dark beard, passport camera, 2009, could be anyone now. He uses no phones, no email, no digital infrastructure of any kind. He moves every 5 to 7 days, never repeating a location, operating through a network of safe houses so deliberately distributed that his own organization's senior leadership cannot tell you where he slept last Tuesday. The CIA dedicated a task force to finding him. 3 years, hundreds of analysts, billions of dollars in satellite coverage and signals monitoring. Nothing. Then they send you, and you do something the task force didn't do. You stop looking for him. Instead, you look for his shadow. Here is the concept. A person who exists completely off any grid still exists in the physical world. He eats food that someone sources. He receives medical care from someone who knows his real name. He communicates through intermediaries who have faces and addresses and habits. He has people he trusts. Not many, but some. Each of those people leaves a trace. Each trace has a shape. Map enough shapes, and the negative space between them starts to resolve into something, starts to look like a man. 14 months, 3 countries, 3 completely separate identities, each requiring not just a new name and documents, but a new memory. A constructed childhood, specific schools, the smell of a particular kitchen, a football team you've supported since you were 8 years old. You don't just carry the cover, you inhabit it deep enough that when someone asks a casual question at a dinner table, the answer comes before you think about it. In Turkey, you're a freelance journalist covering post-conflict reconstruction, you interview aid workers, you attend NGO conferences, you buy drinks for logistics coordinators whose funding sources don't quite add up, and you let them talk about their work for as long as they want to. In Jordan, you work medical distribution for a small health NGO. You visit clinics in underserved areas. You ask carefully and indirectly about a doctor who used to work in the region, one who now travels to treat patients requiring complete discretion. You ask the way you'd ask about anyone, not directly, but in the natural gaps between other questions, where people fill silence without realizing what they're filling it with. In Pakistan, you're an investor scouting construction opportunities, local officials, remote development projects. Who is building in areas where nothing should need building? Who is sourcing materials for locations without infrastructure or population to justify them? Everywhere, you listen more than you speak. 47 individuals mapped across 3 countries. The engineer's courier, his doctor, the brother who manages finances, extended family networks providing shelter without fully understanding what they're sheltering. The breakthrough comes from none of them. It comes from a food delivery pattern. Sagan identifies a 6-week spike in staple food procurement flowing toward a mountain village with stable population and stable consumption history going back years. No seasonal explanation, no local event, just more food suddenly, moving toward a place that didn't need more food before. You go in as a journalist. Reconstruction efforts? Agricultural recovery, the kind of story that gets approved instantly because nobody reads it. Your photographer is activity, 3 years embedded in country, waiting for exactly this. You live in the village for 2 weeks. You eat meals with families. You drink tea with an elder named Farid who has survived 4 governments and treats guests with the specific warmth of someone who has learned that hospitality is the one thing that outlasts everything else. You watch the compound on the hill through a camera lens that is also a scope. Vehicles arriving after midnight, leaving before dawn, food deliveries tripling on irregular schedules, guard rotations running 4-hour intervals, 2 at the gate, 2 on the roof, perimeter sweep every 90 minutes. On the 11th day, a face clears the database. Not the engineer, his brother, a financier presumed dead for 5 years. If the brother is there, he is there. You relay everything. GPS coordinates precise to 1 meter, guard positions and rotation times, entry points, structural vulnerabilities in the outer wall, approach vectors, extraction contingencies. Then Fareed invites you for a farewell meal because he can tell you're leaving even though you haven't said so. You eat with his family. His granddaughter shows you her schoolwork. He gives you a jar of honey to take with you. You tell him you'll send a copy of the article. You know you won't. 72 hours after the car takes you across the border, the news reports a military operation against a senior terrorist figure. No details released. The host government issues a formal protest. The State Department issues a formal denial. In a building in Virginia, 2 new stars are carved into a wall. No names beneath them. You drew the map. You counted the guards. You timed the patrols. And you shook a kind old man's hand and made a promise you will never keep. That part doesn't make the classified file. Some missions are clean. This one is not. The scientist, you call him the professor, has spent 12 years building something his government intends to use against cities. He spent the last 4 of those 12 years trying carefully and without being able to say so directly to anyone to communicate that he wants out. His daughter's piano teacher is activity, embedded 3 years, waiting for exactly this use case. The message she delivers is simple. 1 night, 1 window, 1 door that opens and then closes permanently. His choice. He says yes. Team of 4. All activity. All ghosts. Months of preparation. SMAPs. Forged documents. Safe houses arranged through cutouts who don't know who they're working for or why. A power outage on the extraction night. Engineered by SIGINT. Holding for exactly 90 minutes. In the darkness, you move. Near failure 1. The checkpoint is routine. The papers are flawless. $50,000 of forgery, 14 months of legend building and every supporting detail. The guard takes the documents, examines them, makes a phone call. 4 minutes pass. The professor's younger daughter, 7 years old, told this is an adventure, mostly believing it, chooses this precise moment to begin crying. Not dramatically, the quiet, exhausted crying of a child who is past her bedtime and wants to go home. The guard looks up from his call, looks at the child, looks at the documents, waves you through. A 7-year-old's exhaustion just saved 6 lives. Near failure 2. The boat is 40 minutes into an 8-hour crossing when SIGINT radios a course change on a patrol vessel. Estimated intercept 11 minutes. 2 options. Neither is acceptable. You continue. The patrol vessel stops 4 minutes later. A mechanical fault. A SIGINT asset confirms afterward, entirely unrelated to your crossing. Pure accident. The ocean doesn't negotiate. Near failure 3. The airfield is a flat strip of dirt surrounded by darkness. The plane was scheduled for 0200. At 0227, there is no plane. At 0238, the professor asks very quietly, so his daughters won't hear, did they change their minds? You tell him, no, you are not certain. At 0251, you hear engines before you see lights. No markings. 3 men who don't offer names, who move with the efficiency of people who have done this in many places and never discussed it afterward. Everyone boards. No one speaks. The professor's younger daughter falls asleep against your shoulder before the wheels leave the ground. She'll grow up with a different name, in a country she didn't choose, with no memory of this night beyond a vague sense of movement and darkness, and someone holding her hair back over the side of a boat. She'll never know how close it came. 6 months of debriefing, everything the professor knows, diagrams, timelines, facility locations, the complete architecture of a program running across 4 sites for 9 years. The nuclear program is set back a decade. No bombs, no war. Your name is on nothing. Here's what nobody puts in the envelope with the plane ticket and the new name. The cost isn't the missed birthdays, though you've missed 6 of your sons. It isn't the divorce, though that happened quietly without anger, which somehow made it worse than anger would have. It isn't the friendships that couldn't exist because every friendship is a potential liability, and you learned that early and never unlearned it. The cost is more specific than any of that. It accumulates in increments small enough to ignore until they aren't. Year 1. Your wife flinches slightly when you come home from a long deployment. Not fear, something more careful, like she's waiting to see which version of you walk through the door this time. Year 3. Your son calls you by your first name once, by accident, then looks away before you can respond. He's grown accustomed to a father who is somewhat hypothetical. Year 5, you pick up your real passport. Not the cover, the actual document, and for 3 full seconds, you cannot connect the name on it to yourself. You read it twice. You tell yourself it's fatigue. Year 7, you notice you've been observing your own emotions the way you observe a target. Cataloging, filing, not experiencing them, but analyzing them from a slight distance. This sensation corresponds to grief. This one to loneliness. Processing, not living. That's the moment you understand what the work has actually done. The most complete operation you ever ran wasn't against a financier or a bomb maker or a nuclear program. It was against yourself, and it worked. The question that follows, every quiet morning, every ordinary cup of coffee, when there's no mission, no cover identity, no operational objective requiring you to be someone specific. Who are you? You're not entirely sure anymore. But here's the reason you kept going. The one that survives every other reason at 3 in the morning in a hotel room in a city you won't name. An airport, Dallas, early morning, a family. Father, mother, 2 kids, mouse ears from a theme park. The specific exhaustion of people returning from somewhere good. They're not scanning the room, not checking exits, not watching faces. They're just sitting there, existing without having to look. That's what you protect, not a country, not an idea, that specific thing. The right to exist without having to look. Back to the cafe. The young man who doesn't know you're watching him has adjusted his posture. He noticed he'd been sitting too rigidly and corrected it. That's something. He's learning. He has no idea how much is left to learn, which is exactly how you felt 30 years ago in a room very much like this one. You could cross the room and sit down across from him. You could tell him things that would save him years. How to carry a cup so it partially obscures your face without looking like you're hiding behind it. How to use shop window reflections instead of turning your head. How to move with the rhythm of foot traffic instead of against it. How to become so unremarkable, so thoroughly gray, so aggressively forgettable that you stop existing in the peripheral vision of everyone around you. You won't, because he doesn't know you exist. And the rule has always been, people who don't know you exist get to keep not knowing. You finish your coffee. You leave exact change, every currency, every country for 30 years because it's the detail that makes a waiter's memory of you go negative. You fold the newspaper, you stand. Outside, the morning is doing what mornings do. Couples walking, kids heading somewhere. A man reading his phone with the focused expression of someone who just received news that changes something. Ordinary life, the thing worth protecting. 17 identities, 37 operations, 12 countries. 4 moments where the math on survival went negative and you made your peace and kept moving. No ceremony, no record, no name on anything. Just a star on a wall in a building you'll never visit, in a corridor that doesn't appear on any floor plan, in an organization that has never existed. You turn up your collar, you walk, just another face, just another gray jacket, just another unremarkable man on an ordinary morning, forgettable, invisible, gone. If you want to know what was found when parts of this unit were partially declassified, when Schurkidsters, and what those documents revealed about operations that were never supposed to surface, that's what we're covering next. Leave a comment. What's the detail from this story that stays with you?